So, is it working? Yeah, it is. Okay, cool. So this is the last time, as I said, that I will be presenting material from CS50. And we've got a few good topics to talk about today. The first topic that I want to talk to you about is JQuery. So can someone tell me what JQuery actually is? What is JQuery? If you had to describe it in a single sentence or two, what would you say? Yeah. It's a library, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, what does that mean that it's a library then? How is it different from JavaScript? We wrote a lot of JavaScript last time, right? How is it different from JavaScript? What is it? Yeah, so it gives us a lot of functionality. It makes our lives easier. It simplifies things, right? What are some of the functions that we saw it used for in the prep work? You remember? What are we using it for? Yeah, go ahead. Document ready, so what does that do? Right, so it allows us to specify some behavior that we want to happen after the page has been loaded. Exactly right. What else can it provide for us? What other nice stuff can it do? Yeah. Fade in and fade out, sure. There's one very important feature that we're going to use it for today that we talked about last time, actually, as a matter of fact. It interacts with a very important piece of web page. Yeah. So you can do stuff with user interface stuff, like clicking, typing stuff in, absolutely. There was a big important piece of the web page that we talked about last time, rhymes with, oh gosh, BOM, I don't know. The DOM, right? It makes it easy for us to interact with the DOM. It provides us a different way of interacting with our web pages, with the DOM. One thing that I would like to make clear, actually, that confuses a lot of people, it even confused me when I first started getting into this stuff. jQuery is JavaScript. It's not different from JavaScript. It is JavaScript, right? So when you're writing jQuery code, you are still writing JavaScript code. It looks a little bit different than plain JavaScript. Most people, last time I heard mentors, I won't name names, saying that it feels really strange to write normal JavaScript code because you just get so used to writing stuff in jQuery, since it's a lot more convenient. The code is a little bit cleaner, it's a little bit nicer. So, alrighty. Any questions about jQuery stuff? All right, then let's talk about AJAX. What's AJAX? Can you describe what AJAX is for me? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a great description. So we load up the web page, and then AJAX then allows us to manipulate that web page, maybe load a different piece of that web page after the original version has already been loaded. So what do we use it? What do we use it for? What's the big deal about that? Why do we? Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, all of us are, well, I'll speak for myself. I'm glued to my inbox. I'm checking my email every 2 minutes. I don't have to sit there and refresh the page, though. As soon as a new email comes in, it just pops right up. That's AJAX in action. Another example they used, I think, was Google Maps, right? If I'm scrolling through Google Maps and I go off the screen, I see a bunch of gray boxes, but they eventually get filled in. That's AJAX working to update the page as I move the screen around. So it waits and sees which direction I want to move in, and then it uses an AJAX call to fill in the stuff in that direction. So how do we perform this AJAX request? What's that look like in the code? What am I going to use? I think they talked about a couple different ways we could accomplish this. Yeah. An anonymous function, or it actually had a slightly different name for the same thing, perhaps. It's also on this slide, called a callback function. What does it mean for it to be a callback function? We talked about anonymous functions last time, and they're pretty similar to callback functions. What does it mean for something to be a callback function? Yeah. Yeah, so when I am loading this, when I'm running this AJAX request, when I'm using AJAX, I have to wait for stuff to come back. And so the callback function is what happens whenever that request comes back to me, whenever that request is successfully completed, right? It is an anonymous function oftentimes. It's going to be an anonymous function. You'll see that today when we start to do some exercise a little bit later. So last question, what does it mean for something to be asynchronous? This was mentioned a bit in the prep work today too. You get a feel for what it means for something to be asynchronous? Yeah, go ahead. Sure. So how does that relate back to our webpage then? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's what asynchronous programming really gets for us. These requests take time. I have to go out and I have to process the request and I have to wait for the results to come back. Am I going to lock the whole website up while I'm waiting for that data to come back? No, I'm not. That would be really inconvenient. So I send the request off and I just go off and I do other stuff for a little while. And then whenever the request comes back in, it notifies me and I process it and I display it on the web page. That's an asynchronous call. It's an asynchronous AJAX call in action. Cool. We're going to write a little bit of AJAX later today, and the studio today is also geared pretty heavily around AJAX. Are there any AJAX-related questions right now? All right, the last piece of today actually was not super code-heavy, but it was something pretty important, so I want to talk about it anyway. And a lot of people actually got a taste of this last time when Mike gave a talk on this subject of security. So the very last section of today focused on security a little bit. They mentioned some common types of security attacks. Do you remember what some of those attacks are? We've talked about some in past classes as well. What are some common attacks? Yeah. Yeah, brute force attack. So oftentimes what am I brute forcing exactly? What am I guessing? Passwords oftentimes, yeah. So computers can check things very quickly. A computer can check lots and lots of passwords in a second, lots of them. So if it's trying to get into somebody's email address or somebody's bank account or something like that, it can sit there and just try different combinations of passwords until it guesses the right one. What are some other kinds of attacks? Yeah. Injection. So we talked about SQL injection in the past. What does that involve? Yeah, so you're injecting code into the program, or in our case, a web page, right? So there's a big old text box on that web page asking us for some information. And instead of typing in what they want us to type in, we're going to type in some code to try and interact with what's happening behind the scenes. That's injection. What are some other kinds of attacks that you guys have heard about? Yeah. Denial of service, what's that about? Yeah, you have a lot of machines, a lot of them, all trying to ask something on the internet for something at the very same time. In fact, I believe Vocarium was under a denial of service attack earlier this semester. I'm not sure what they did to deserve such an attack, but these things happen. Yep. A lot of times these things show up in the news. Have you heard of any recent security breaches that have been, I can think of at least two that have been in the last few weeks, made the national news. Yeah. IRS? Yeah, so the IRS, they've had a couple, I think, in the last little while. All of their employees' personal information has been leaked out. How does stuff like that happen? How does stuff like that happen? Does anybody remember? Actually, I'm not as familiar with that specific example. It was probably some sort of injection, or it might have been some sort of password leaking. There's also the human element, right? Sometimes I don't need to guess your password. Sometimes I can trick you into telling me your password. I can pretend to be somebody that I'm not. Or you get those annoying emails all the time that says, if you don't send me your password by the end of the day, your email account's going to be shut down. Well, guess what? It's not really going to be shut down. They're just trying to steal your password. Those are called phishing attacks. Yeah. There were a couple other big stories recently that I know you guys have heard about. Yeah. I'm sorry? Ransomware. So ransomware has been making the news a lot more recently. What's ransomware? What is that? Yep. So they take your stuff, or they make it so that you can't access your stuff anymore, and then they come to you and say, we'll give it back if you pay us a whole bunch of money. Those kinds of attacks have been increasingly common of late, it seems like. There were a couple that just made the news in the last few weeks. Schnucks has had some credit card problems in the past. I had to get my debit card replaced because of that one. And then Target had one right after that I had to get my debit card replaced again. Yep. And then somebody else got my debit card when I bought something off of Amazon, so I had to get it again. It's really annoying. This was all within like a 2-month span. It was really annoying. But I got to know my bank teller really well, so that was kind of the silver lining. Yeah, ATM skimmers, that's kind of, I think, sort of along the lines of what happened at, well, no, Schnucks and Target, I think, was a bit more complicated than that. But people put little pieces on the ATMs to steal your data. Yeah. Hmm. So the couple that I were thinking of recently, remember when they were trying to unlock the phone of the San Bernardino shooter, right? What happened there? Apple said that they couldn't unlock it, they physically could not, or that they could, but it would be a breach of privacy in order for them to do so, and they weren't willing to compromise. And so somebody screwed up. They had the ability to get into it. They were going to use the password recovery system. They apparently had access to his email address. So they could have just said, I need a new password. It sends them a new password to his email address, and then they get in. But somebody screwed up, and they lost that information somehow. So the government asked Apple to hack in, and they said, no, we're not going to. And then a few weeks later, the government said, oh, okay, we figured it out. We don't need your help anymore, right? Did anybody read up on how the government finally cracked into that phone? Well, they did pay somebody, that's true. Yes, they did pay somebody to do it. The problem was they couldn't brute force the phone, because if you try too many times on an iPhone, it just turns into a brick. It won't let you in anymore. I think you get 10 guesses. And after the 10th time, it just says, nope, I'm done, I'm shutting off, and it's gone for good. Everything is just done. So they couldn't just sit there and try every combination, because that wouldn't work. So they used a very sophisticated technique. I think it's called NAND flashing or something like that, where they actually pulled the circuitry. They pulled a copy of the actual circuitry off the phone and made copies of it. So they could try it 10 times on each copy before it would break, but they could make an infinite number of copies. Very time consuming. Requires a lot of resources, but the government has a lot of resources, so they were able to do something like that. If you or I wanted to do something like that, it would take, it would probably be outside of our means, unfortunately. Yep. Another big one that made the news recently is the Panama Papers. That huge data leak. Nobody actually knows where that stuff came from, but people are suggesting, I was just reading today, that since there's a surprisingly lack of Americans affected by this leak, that it might have been somebody in the United States that hacked in there and released all that information. But nobody knows, as of right now, where that information came from or how it was acquired. And that's actually really scary, right? That's actually really scary. If something happens and we know how it happened, we can fix it. If something happens and we don't know what happened, then what are we going to do? I don't know. So security is kind of a scary topic, but there are some things we can do. So what are some simple techniques we can do to guard against these kinds of things? Yeah. Yeah, so separation's a big thing. Yep, we want to keep things separate. Model view controller is a good tool for that purpose, right? And it's good from a design perspective, but it also helps make security easier, I should say. We should always use different passwords for every website. Everybody does that, right? No? No? You should also use very long passwords. That's another There's a very famous comic that they linked to about that, where it's better to use a very long password than a short password with all kinds of random symbols in it. And actually, your email address is probably the most valuable thing to protect security-wise, because if they can get into your email address, they can get into probably just about anything else that you've ever come into contact with on the internet. All right, now that I've scared the crap out of everybody, why don't we talk about some JavaScript stuff? Are there any questions, actually, before we move on? Any questions? Okay, so the main topics today were jQuery and AJAX calls. So we're going to do some exercises that involve both of those things. If you remember, we've been using this same form the last few times that allows us to request a country. Last time we turned it into a quiz where I actually have to say, you know, the capital of this country is this guy, right? And then it would tell me whether I was right or wrong. We wrote it in JavaScript last time. We did not use any jQuery, none, not a single bit of jQuery in our last version. So the first thing I want to do today is take that form and rewrite it so that it uses jQuery. If you want to grab a copy of it, it's on Piazza. I posted it on Tuesday. So you can grab the most recent version of that form. I think it was called Country Form 2. And then rewrite the JavaScript that's in that form to use jQuery instead of the traditional JavaScript. So I'll give you, the functionality should remain exactly the same. We're not actually changing anything about how it works yet. I want it to behave exactly the same way. I just want it to use jQuery instead of JavaScript. One thing that you might consider doing, actually, while you're working on this, you know, whoops, that's a solution, don't look at that. Our JavaScript got kind of big. This is where we ended up last time with our JavaScript. It was getting to be quite sizable. You might consider separating this out, putting the JavaScript into its own separate, oh, my screen failed, thank you. Let me see if I can get that back. You might consider separating the JavaScript out into its own separate file. I believe you saw how that could happen in the studio last week. So you might consider copying all this out and moving it elsewhere first. And that way you've got the JavaScript separated out from the actual HTML. Because for this problem, the form itself is probably not going to change. It's just the JavaScript that needs to change. So take a look at this JavaScript, this stuff down here, and try to make it, you know, try to use as much jQuery as is reasonable to accomplish the same functionality. I'm going to give you a few minutes to work on this. Talk to your neighbors. You know, you can treat this as a group assignment if you want. A group exercise. I'll give you 5 or 10 minutes to work on it, and then we'll go over a solution. Yeah, question? It's 2. Yeah, it's number 2. Yep, that's right. Should be on the Piazza site. Alrighty, I'll be around. Let me know if you have any questions. Alrighty. Why don't we start to work through this exercise. The first thing I want to do, actually, before I start writing jQuery is to get this JavaScript out of this file and into its own separate file. So let me do that first, because it's just bothering me, to be quite honest. So I'm going to create a new file. I'll call it country. Oh gosh, I already have a country. 3, 2. I don't know. That's fine. Create a new file, and I'll copy all this JavaScript into that file, like so. And my indentations are all messed up, so I need to fix that real quick. That's going to bother me too. All right. So I've got all my JavaScript in this new file now, which means I can go back to where I was before, and I can take this stuff out, right? But then how do I put that file into my HTML file now? How can I now import this JavaScript into my HTML file? What do I have to do? Yeah. I have to put it up in the header. Actually, I mean, I think I could put it other places, but the header is a good place for it, absolutely. I say script, and then how do I link it up to that file? What do I say? Yeah. I'm sorry? So the source, that's what I need, right? Source equals, and then the name of the file, which I called mine country32.js. That's what I called mine, right? So I haven't changed the JavaScript code at all. All I did was I separated it out into its own separate file, and if I go into the, if I go to my website and I try out the form, it should behave the same way as it did. Oh, hey, cool. This works. It should behave the same way that it did before. I just want to make sure that it does. Make sure that it helps if I spell things properly. Oh, no, it doesn't. So I screwed something up. What did I do? What did I do? I'm sorry? Did I bring my script tags over? Clearly, I messed something up. Did I? Oh, I didn't save this. That's what I did do. Actually, let me get rid of some of these tabs here while I'm thinking about it. I think I just forgot to save it, or it could be the same problem from last time, actually. So, but let me try it again now. That's all saved and good. I'll go back up and refresh this guy here. This one wasn't working last time for whatever reason, so... Oh, cool. Hang on. No cause for alarm yet. Maybe. Now it's... Okay. Alright, we're back. And I don't care if I get it right or wrong. Yeah, it's actually doing the same thing it did last time. Man, what is wrong with my code? That's annoying. Well, I don't know. Form.onSubmit. Get country form. Let me make sure that it actually hit the, it actually got included here in my page. I should still be able to see the script that was loaded. So there's the link. So it actually did see the change that I made. That's good. So why is it not doing my stuff? That's what I don't know. I'm sorry? Oh, actually, I know why. Actually. I made a mistake. So we haven't changed anything over to jQuery yet, and that's actually a very important detail. Because jQuery gives us some abilities that traditional JavaScript won't handle. Remember before, the JavaScript was after the form, and it was after the form for a reason, right? Because I have to wait for that form to load before I can pull stuff out of it and process it. When I switch over to jQuery, that's no longer true. but I haven't switched it over to jQuery yet. That's why my form is busted right now. So let's switch it over to jQuery, and I'm confident that once we do that, it'll solve this problem. jQuery gives us the ability to process elements. I can put my code at any point in the file, right? I don't have to put it after the form anymore. I can put it anywhere. So let's fix that. Let's start switching stuff over to jQuery, and it should solve our problem. So not all of this code needs to change. Only some things in this code are going to change. What are some things that I'm going to look for as candidates to switch over to jQuery? What are some of the things we talked about earlier that jQuery is good at? Anybody? Yeah. Yeah, so $paren document, what's that do for us? That's a great way to start. What is that actually doing for us? So that is a jQuery statement, but that statement actually does something for us, right? This is a jQuery statement that does something on our behalf. Yeah. It does. It grabs the DOM basically and makes it available for jQuery to use. So what's next? What's the next thing I need to do here? Any ideas? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, I understand what you're getting at. Yes, you could do that with jQuery, but we've got, I think, some more work to do before we get to that point. We can maybe take a look at that later. There are some other things that I'd like to tackle before I get to that. So remind me in a little bit if I forget. What do I want to do with this document? There's something I need to do with this document. This right here is, useful, but I'm not actually doing much with it. What do I need to do? Yeah, in the back. Make sure it's loaded. So what do I type in to do that? .ready. Okay. And then what? Yeah. I make sure there's a function. So what do I want this to do when it's ready, right? What do I want this to actually perform for me? What behaviors do I want this thing to do? So I can actually set this to be an anonymous function. Yeah? We cool with that? So actually, I already have an anonymous function right here. But I want to be a little bit careful. I don't want this code to operate right away. I want to wait for them to submit the form first. So what am I going to do here? What's my next step? I can create a function here. That's fine. And that maybe moves us a little bit closer to our desired goal. But I still haven't done anything that processes the form when I click that button. So how do that? I can use a lot of this code that I already have, sure, but this guy right here, form, there's a jQuery way to grab that stuff. There's a jQuery way of doing this. How would I grab this form using jQuery? Yeah, there we go. I would say $parentheses, and then what am I going to put inside of here? Whatever the ID of the form is, right? Country form. This is almost there. There's just one little piece that I need. What's missing? There's one little piece missing. What is country form? Country form is what? What is that? It's an ID. So how do I pull stuff by ID using jQuery? I use a hash, just like we did in CSS, right? I use a hash. All right. So I pull that element, and now I can use this function, right? So now I should be able to say on submit, or is it just submit? I don't remember actually. I think it might just be submit. I might have to look that up in just a little bit. Equals, and now I can actually put my anonymous function in here, like this. Let me indent this stuff because it's going to drive me. Oh gosh. There we go. We're making progress here. We're making progress. So pull the document. When the document's ready, right, I have a function that's going to pull the form, and then when the form is submitted, I have another function. What's that function going to do? It's going to start processing the form values to do the same stuff that we did before. The same stuff. I think there might be some syntax issues, though, that I've screwed up here. Does anybody see any syntax issues that I've made so far? Or maybe we can do those at the end, perhaps. No? Yeah. After ready, so you're saying like this, and get rid of the equal sign? Oops, gosh, I screwed it up. Thank you. Like that? I think you're right. I think that's how I want it to be. So, in fact, sorry, I'm being nitpicky about my formatting. That's not unusual for me. Same thing here, right? Submit, I want to do it like this. Parentheses, and then the function definition, right? All right, this is looking a little bit better. It's looking a little bit better. What does that mean down here at the bottom? I put in these open parentheses. The closed parentheses have to go somewhere, right? Those are going to go down here at the bottom. So I'll say parentheses, semicolon, bracket, parentheses, semicolon, to close out those functions. The bracket closes out the anonymous function. The parenthesis matches up with this parenthesis, and then the semicolon terminates the line. That always trips me up when I write in JQuery as well. All those symbols at the end, counting all the different brackets and parentheses that exist. Okay. We're heading in the right direction. There's still some stuff we can do with JQuery to make this code look a little bit nicer. Anytime I access the DOM, anytime I access that document object model, I want to use jQuery to do that instead of how we did it before. Notice I had a variable called form in the past, and I deleted that. So anything that references form is not going to work anymore, because I deleted that variable. It's gone. So something like this needs to be changed. How can I replace this with something that looks a little bit more like jQuery? What would I say to get that value back out using jQuery? Any ideas? Yeah. Country form. Oops. That's for the form, yeah. But then we need, so this was actually getting the drop-down box, right? The select box. So how would I pull that select box then? Yeah, I just want to pull country, which if I go back to my HTML, you see is actually the name of the select box. So I want to pull that. I don't actually have to go through the form anymore. I can actually just pull directly the thing that I want. That's a nice thing about jQuery, right? I can just pull the thing that I want directly. You could actually do that with JavaScript too, if you really wanted to. All right, so now I just look at the country using jQuery syntax, which looks like this. Same thing for this guy. If I want to get that text box has a name to it, or an ID. It's called capital. Actually, this should probably be switched to ID. I'm going to switch that. Does it need a name or not? I don't think it does need a name, actually. I don't think it does. Yeah, thank you. I do. .val is the same thing as saying .value in regular JavaScript. This is the jQuery way of getting the value out of an element. Absolutely, we do need that. So then if I want to replace this using jQuery, what am I going to do? It's going to look pretty similar, right? Instead of hashtag country, I'm going to say hashtag capital. So instead of typing all that stuff out, I'll just copy this one and do it this way. Capital. And there's a few more of those that we can swap out. Here's another reference to capital, right? So I can actually just paste this in for that one. Over here, there's another reference to country, so I can actually paste the country reference in there. and we've successfully replaced all of our references to the DOM with JQuery references instead of JavaScript references, right? There's still some more things that we can do. In fact, some things that we have to do to make this correct. So this also interacts with the document as well, right? This append child. There's a jQuery way of doing this, too. I'm appending an element to the form. This form variable, remember, doesn't exist anymore. We got rid of it. It doesn't exist anymore. So how can I replace this with a proper reference to the form? Do I already have it somewhere on the screen? I do, right? It's right here. I already have a reference to the form right here. So I can actually just use that. Append child doesn't exist in jQuery. They went and changed the name on us to just append. But the way that we create this text node can remain the same. Document.create text node, that can remain the same. That's okay. I believe we're about finished. There are just a couple of loose ends that we need to tie up. With jQuery, I don't say return false down here. What do I say instead? Does anybody remember? It's a little different. Yes, you got it. Well, say that one more time for me. Event.prevent default. That's the same thing as saying return false in traditional JavaScript for us. I believe this JavaScript file is actually in pretty good shape. But if I tried to run this right now, it wouldn't work. There's one other step that we need to put in here before it'll actually work, and it's actually in this file. I'm using jQuery, which is a library. Have I linked that library in anywhere yet? I haven't. So that's got to go up here at the top. And honestly, I don't remember what that address is, so I'm going to cheat and look at what I used here and copy that over, because I just don't remember what it is. I never do. It's not worth the space in my brain. So that's what we're going to use to link the jQuery library in. And now we should be in business, unless I made a mistake, which is entirely possible. We should be in business. So let's go back to our form. Let me get rid of the dev tools here. Let's go back to our form and do a refresh on it and see if it behaves the way that we expect it to. I think that it will. It says I'm correct. That's good. If I type in something wrong, does it tell me I'm wrong? St. Louis. I'm not right. We are not the capital. That actually doesn't bother me that we're not the capital. I'm okay with that. What about our validation? That should still work too, right? Okay, that's good. That's good too. We've successfully converted stuff over to jQuery. So if you look at our code, just to kind of wrap this exercise up, a lot of it looks the same. The if statements didn't really change. The different cases that we had, right? We're still doing the exact same stuff. We're not doing anything different. Just the way that we interact with that document object model. That's the biggest difference between the two. The fact that I can use this in my header and abstract that code out, that's a big change. That's a nice change. That's convenient for us to be able to do with jQuery. So it does look a little bit different. Looks a little bit cleaner to me, anyway. It's a little bit nicer. Are there any questions about what we've done? No? Alrighty, so the next exercise that I have that should take the rest of the time for us, I want to do some AJAX stuff. So right now, what we have in our code, just to kind of give you a little background on this exercise, I've got this object with all the different countries and the capitals. Well, that's a little unfortunate. I don't like having that hard-coded in there. So what I want to do next is use an AJAX call. When I select a country, I want that AJAX call to go off to some web service, look up the capital of whatever country I selected, bring back the value, and then say, hey, you were right or wrong. So now I don't have to hard-code the answers in, right? I can just go look the answers up and use the whatever answers I find online. So earlier today, I went out and found an API that can do this kind of stuff for me. Let me show you an example of a call to this API so that we know what we're going to be doing heading forward here. Oh, okay, this is nice. That's all right, though. I trust it. Oh, cool. What did I do wrong? This worked. Oh, I see what I did wrong. Sorry. I have a question mark and an ampersand in there. I don't need both. I just need the question mark. And I still screwed it up. Cool. What did I do wrong here? Does that really not exist? Apparently it doesn't. So let me go get the correct address real quick. What happened here? Did the API disappear between this afternoon and now? That seems unlikely. What? geonames.org. You see it's on my history. All right. It's all here. What did I do wrong? I did something wrong, apparently. Let me redo this guy. Huh. That's weird. Here's an example of call for the US. Let me use my username. All right, I did it. I did it. Here's an example of an API call to this API, which I apparently was using incorrectly. I bet I know what happened. I bet PowerPoint or something changed the capitalization somehow and made it. Anyway, that's besides the point. It does work. So you can see I supplied it with two parameters, my username, which there is no API key. It's just a username. So you don't have to sign up for an account. If you just kind of want to follow along with me, you're more than welcome to do that. You can even use my username. I don't care. That might break if everybody tries to use it, but we'll see what happens. I'm not too worried about it, actually. I'm not too worried about it. And the other parameter is the country. So I just put in the US. And you see that it returns information. Let me zoom in here so you guys can actually read it. Such as the continent, the capital. So that's what we're really looking for. I don't know what they did with the DC. It's just gone for whatever reason. I don't know why. Some other stuff, which I don't actually know what this stuff is. That's probably longitude and latitude, I would imagine. So you can see population. I wonder how accurate that is. 310 million. Seems relatively accurate. Yeah. So just a whole bunch of geographic information about a country. If I want a different country, I just plug in a different country code up here, right? So for Canada, it's CAN, and oh boy, maybe it's not. Is it CN? Yeah. That's China. Close. CA, thank you. Yeah, that looks like California to me, but I'm an American, so what do I know? Yep, Canada, perfect. There's the capital. So really, I don't care about any of this stuff except for this guy right here. That's all I'm looking for, right, is the capital. I don't care about the rest of this stuff. So the idea then is, now when I need to look up the answer, I don't want to use that object that I created. I want to make an AJAX call to this. Plug in the appropriate country, get the results back, somehow pull the capital out of all this stuff, right? Because I can't request just this. I get all of this or I get nothing. So I need to pull the capital out of this. What is this, by the way? What am I looking at? It's JSON, right? It's just JSON. So we kind of know how to deal with that stuff in JavaScript. So I'm gonna do this one together. Actually, I want to do this as a group exercise, so you can kind of follow along with me as I go through this one. And I'm going to start where we left off. This code's fine. This code's perfectly fine for us to use as a starting point for this exercise. First thing I need to do, actually, to make our lives a little bit easier, I'm going to go back to the HTML, countryform2.html. And you see right now for these values, I have USA, Canada, and Mexico. Those aren't what the API wants, right? The API wants the letter codes, the standardized letter codes. So I think the first thing to do to make our lives a little bit easier is to fill in those standardized letter codes. We said it was CA. For Mexico, I think it's MEX, but let me double check that just to be sure, because I was wrong about the other one. Yeah, I was. Is it just MX then? Yes, it is just MX. There we go. It's just MX. Maybe they're all 2 letters. Probably so. So I'm going to use those standardized country codes because that'll make it very easy for us to just plug right into the request, right? Make it pretty simple for us. I don't think there's anything else I have to change about this form. I think this form is going to work just fine for us. So now let's visit the JavaScript. Which part of the JavaScript is going to need to change? Which part am I going to need to worry about with the AJAX call? Where's that going to go? Well, look at what we have here. We have, what is this? Validation, right? This is also validation. Is that affected by our AJAX call? Is the validation stuff changed at all by the AJAX? No. It has nothing to do with what we're trying to accomplish. The validation is going to remain the same. So then down here, we have the part where we check to see if we're correct or incorrect. That's what's going to change, right? Because I want to get rid of this. I don't like this. This bothers me, this object that has the capitals hard-coded in there. I want to replace that with an AJAX call. That's what I want to do. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and come up here and delete that whole guy. I don't want him anymore. He's gone. I want to use an AJAX call to do that instead. So I'm not going to delete this code. But I do want to insert an AJAX call in here. So this is going to have to change, right? This is going to have to change. I don't have that object anymore. I'm going to have to get the result of an AJAX call and then fill this in with that data somehow. So let's see if we can start to piece that together. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to come down here and just make this a regular old else statement. And the reason for that is I need to insert an AJAX call in here. So my AJAX call is going to go right about here. Oops, I don't need that bracket. This is where my AJAX needs to go, right here, right? I can't check to see whether I'm right or wrong until I ask for that information and get the data back. So here's where I need your help. How do I make this call? What do I need to type in here to make this AJAX call? How do I do that? David Malin talked about this in one of the videos. I know he did. Doug presented an alternative way. Not this Doug, a different Doug, Harvard Doug. Presented an alternative way. Note takers? Yeah. I'm sorry? .ajax? $.ajax? How I remember David Malin doing it. Yeah, get JSON is the way I remember David Malin doing it. It was $.get.JSON. Oops, come on now. And you see that it specifies some stuff in here, the URL. So I have to fill out this request. So what's the actual request? Well, I can go up and use this as a guide. I'm just going to copy this address, right? And then we'll fill in the pieces that we need to. This is the address to, this needs to be HTTPS, or else Google Chrome gets mad. It needs to be HTTPS. It also needs to be a string. So let me switch that up to be a string. Now there's something in here that needs to change. Right now I've got country just permanently set to be Mexico, but that's not right. I want to pull out whatever they put on the form. So maybe right before this happens, I'll create a variable called country, and I'll pull out the country value from the form. How do I do that? How do I pull out the value they suggested as the country? We just did that a little bit ago. Oh, it wasn't that long ago, guys. Yeah, $#country dot val. That'll get the value that they selected from the dropdown. And now that I have this variable, I can insert it into this string, right? I can insert it in here. What am I going to use to insert that in? Concatenation. So I'll say plus country plus quote. My username is not going to change. That's my account, so I have to use that account, right? So that's not going to change. The only thing that's going to change is the country. That's all. What do I want to do next? What's my next thing? I have get JSON, right? What's the next thing that I'm going to do? What do I need next? I talked about this earlier today. So what is this going to do? It's going to send this request off. It has to travel through the tubes and get to the API. The API looks up the information I requested and sends the information back through the tubes, and then I have to do something with it, right? So how do I do something with the information once it gets back? What do I need? Data, right? That's what's being returned, right? I believe. So I think I say data here, if I'm remembering. Get data, like that, with parentheses. And then the last thing it says is success. And it's telling me that this is a function. What kind of a function is this? There's a name for it. We just talked about it earlier today. This is an asynchronous call, that's correct, but that's not what the function is called. It's an anonymous function, but it's a special kind of anonymous function. It's a callback. It's a callback, yeah. So I need to create a function. Data, right? I feel like I've done something wrong, but I'm just going to keep going for now, and we'll figure out what goes wrong in a little bit, what's going on in a little bit here. And now, the function, what do I want the function to do? I want the function to check the data and tell me whether I'm right or wrong. Well, I kind of already have that. Isn't that what this is down here, more or less? So I'm just going to take this stuff and copy it into my callback function. I don't need it down here anymore. This parenthesis, I want to go, oops, I didn't mean to delete that bracket. So let's pause for a second and see what we've got. I've got a call to get JSON. I give it the link to the API. I substitute the country in for the appropriate query parameter. Then I have this callback function. That's what I'm working on right now, right? But I have to make one change to how this callback function works. It says if the value of the capital is equal to this, well, we got rid of that object. That object doesn't exist anymore. So what do we have now to use? We have that JSON data, right? What variable is that in? It's in data, right? It's in data. So if I want to pull it out, I have to use data. But how do I, so data is everything. Data is all of that stuff. I don't want all of it, I just want the capital. So how do I get just the capital out? So, yeah, let's try data.capital. Let's try this. And I think we're really about done. Now, I know there's at least one mistake in here. I feel like there's probably more than one mistake in here. But I still want to try this out and show you some techniques on how to debug this kind of code, because I've gotten a lot of questions about that. So I'm leaving some mistakes in here on purpose so that I can show you how to figure out what's going wrong and try to fix this kind of stuff. So I'm going to save everything, just make sure it's saved. I'm going to go back to my form right here and refresh the page so that it picks up the new stuff. And I'll select USA. And I remember it said it was Washington, not just Washington, D.C., so I'll put in Washington. And I click Submit, and okay, something went wrong. I knew something was going to go wrong. So let's see if we can figure out what went wrong and why. I'm going to open up the developer tools. So the way that I typically do that is I go to Inspect, and then up top there's a tab called Sources, and I should be able to find my JavaScript over here, right? And you can see all the code that we just wrote. Can I zoom in on this guy? Make it a little larger. You can see all the code that we just wrote. It's right here. That's good. So what I want to do then is set a breakpoint somewhere that I think the problem is. Since this is the code that we just wrote, I feel like the problem is somewhere in here. So I'm going to set a breakpoint like right here. And then I'll try and use this page. I'll try and type in some data. And I'll click Submit. And OK, the debugger stopped me at this line where I set the breakpoint. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. There are these buttons down here that we can use to step through. So I'm going to go ahead and say step. And something bad happened. So it says DOM exception, failed to execute query selector all. on element. X is not a valid selector. So that's a pretty cryptic message. But if we want to try and figure out what's going on, I can actually go over to the console here and say, does data work? Data is not defined. So something really bad happened with my AJAX call, in other words. My AJAX request, perhaps, planned. So let's double check that real quick, just to make sure that's okay. What I want to do, instead of putting the URL in here like this, I'm going to create a variable for the URL so that I can actually make sure that it's getting formed correctly. So I'll create a variable called URL equals that. And then I'll use that URL variable in here. This also simplifies my code a little bit. And I'm going to repeat the same process that I just did before. I'm going to go back to my form, close out the DevTools, and refresh the page, and start the whole process over again. See if I can figure out if that URL is getting formed properly. So now I'm going to go back here. My breakpoint's still set. So if I try this now, I click submit, and it takes me here. And if I step over now, I should be able to see what the URL is and make sure that it looks right. So when I take a look at this, it says this guy right here. I should be able to copy that and paste it in and hopefully see the results. Ideally. I need to take the quotes off, but I should be able to see the results here. Did this to me last time. So something didn't quite work out right. Countryinfo.json. Why is it telling me it's not found on this server? Do I not need the S? Earlier I was having trouble when I used. Okay, maybe I don't need the S. I thought I needed the S. Maybe it's me being a little overprotective. So let's take the S off and see if that helps. I feel like that's going to get us into a different piece of trouble, but we'll try it. We'll try it and see. Okay, go back. I'm going to stop this and refresh and try again. Still didn't do anything, so let's open up my DevTools and see what happened this time. See if there's any errors or anything like that going on. USA, Washington. Submit. So we're here. I step again, and it crashed on me. Failed to execute query selector all. So there's that same error message again. So something's not quite right. It seems like my request is okay. Something is not a valid selector. It doesn't like something that we're trying to select for whatever reason. This is not the mistake that I thought we were going to run into, actually. This is a different one. It's just data, not get data? Okay, like this. Do I need the parentheses or not? I don't remember. I don't think I do. I don't think I do need the parentheses. Let's try this one out. Oh, did I refresh the page? I should refresh the page. Open up the debugger. Sources. All right, so the debugger's set. Let's try it out. We get here. Let me double check my URL one more time just to make sure it looks okay. I should be able to just paste it into the browser and make sure that it works. Let me just try that real quick. Yep. So the URL looks good. Let me go back, and I'll say step again, and failed to execute. I still have a problem. I have a solution that I can look at. I can cheat and look at it. It's not really cheating, I guess, but I do have a solution that I can look at. So since this is in jQuery, it looks like we're trying to pull an element that doesn't exist, that it can't find for some reason. The only thing I can think of is that it would be this one, capital. I'm not sure why that would be the case. Am I using the wrong thing? It's called capital right here. Capital dot value, yeah. I'm a little stumped. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to take a peek at my solution real quick for the sake of time. URL, so I don't have that data in there at all. I just go directly into the function, capital.val, that looks good. So let me try that. Let me try taking this out. Like so. Everything else looks okay to me. Let me try this one more time. Made it to the URL. We step through. Step. Okay, so this time, all right, cool. This time it didn't crash on me, so I think taking that middle piece out helped. But now we have this problem. This is one of the problems that I actually was expecting. Have you guys run into this before with previous stuff? I know I've helped other people out with this problem. It says it was loaded over HTTPS but requested an insecure HTML request endpoint. It says it must be served over HTTPS. It has to be. That's a Chrome thing that requires this, which really annoys me. The way that I've fixed that in the past is to just stick the S in here, but that was not working for me earlier, or when I tried it a few minutes ago. Let me see if I can get it to go this time around. Let me refresh the page and try again. All right, I'm at the URL, get the JSON, and what's wrong this time around? It seems like it didn't crash this time. Seems like it didn't. I don't see that error message anymore, but I also don't see anything showing up on the screen. I don't see anything showing up on the screen, which is concerning to me. It could be I don't think it's a parentheses error. I don't think it's a parentheses error. Well, that could be part of it. See, it says data is not defined. That's a problem for sure. The fact that data doesn't exist is a problem because I did define that in my anonymous function. I think for whatever reason, it's not liking the HTTPS that I'm using. And that's really frustrating to me. Let me see if I can figure out why. Where's my URL? Is it gone already? Where's my URL? It's not defined. Awesome. Oh, okay. So it told me I'm incorrect. Well, okay, that's different. That's different. It just tells me I'm wrong, but I'm right. I know I'm right, but it told me I'm wrong. So that's not good. That's not good. So let's dig into this perhaps a little bit more. I'm going to move my breakpoints to inside of my callback. I'm going to move it right here to that spot. Maybe. Let me refresh. Oh, is the internet just not cooperating for me now? But, okay. I know I'm incorrect. Thank you. I just want to refresh the page, please. Can you do that for me? No? Maybe? We're so close. We're so close. Well, now my internet's not cooperating. I did it wrong too many times and it's just given up on me. It's not happy with me anymore. Come on, internet, please. 5 more minutes. Darn it. All right, I'm going to try and open it up in a different tab here. sorry about this. The internet is not working. I can't get to my server at all now. Can't get to it at all. Oh shoot, we were so close. Just when we were making progress. I wonder if I could try a different network. Or like, is Google working or anything working for me? Or is the whole internet down? All of it. The entire internet. Let me try a different network then, since this one is not working. I can't even get to Google, so let me try this one. Oh wow, I can't even get on this network. Can't even connect. Well, okay, let me try this. Let me see if we're good now. Okay, Google's back. All right, cool. I think we're in business. Not found. Well, that's all right. I typed in the address wrong. That's my bad. All right, cool. All right. We're almost done, I promise. Thank you for your patience. So I have my breakpoint set. I'm going to try this one more time, and I'm going to show you a neat little trick. I'll type in the right answer, and I'll click submit, and eventually it should hit this breakpoint. It's going to take a second because it is an asynchronous call, and the internet is acting very slowly right now. Maybe because other people are using my username to hit the API. I don't know if that's causing it or not. It should eventually hit this breakpoint. Maybe. If you click the button more times, it makes it go faster, right? Isn't that usually what happens? I'm getting errors up here. Do you see I have 12 errors now? So let's see if we can see. Yep. That's not good. Let me check the address again. Not found. Why? Why is it not found? I know this works. I know if I take the S off, that it will give me a different problem. This is just blowing up in my face. Not found. That's baffling to me. I don't understand it at all. I was just using this a second ago. If I take the S off, it tells me it's insecure. If I put the S on, it tells me it doesn't exist. So I don't know what to do. I don't know. Well, let me show you what the problem was anyhow, since we are running out of time here. I don't want to take up any more of your time. If I go to the actual data and I take a look at the JSON, I can't pull out the country, I can't pull out the capital directly. It won't let me do that. So I'm looking at United States, and I can see that there is an entry called capital right here, right? But actually, this is inside of something else. The first element is geonames, and then I see a bracket right here, a square bracket. That's telling me it's an array. So this value is embedded inside of an array. So I have this element that contains an array with another object in it that contains the data that I want. So saying data.capital is not good enough because it doesn't fit the format that this data is actually in. If I actually want to pull the capital out, I have to pull the array out first, which is called geonames. I have to get the first element out of the array, so bracket 0, and then I can say dot capital, like that. And if the address, if the API address was working for me, this would in fact work. But since it's not cooperating with me, I'm not highly optimistic. It was working earlier today when I was testing this out. I don't know what happened to it in between. Google Chrome is making this difficult for me as well. I wish I could tell it to just accept the connection even though it's not HTTPS. There's probably a way to do that, as a matter of fact. Is Internet Explorer? I mean, it's a crappier browser, so maybe. Sorry if I offended anybody with that statement. Yeah, I do have Firefox on here, but I could try it in Firefox. Let me see. Let me see if Firefox cooperates. Microsoft Edge, I've never used it, so I mean, I can tell you that I don't think that I would like it, but I've never used it, so I don't have a concrete opinion. Let me try it in Firefox real quick and see if it'll work for me this way. Oh, I actually have an idea. What if I do this? Hang on, let me try one more thing. This might work. This might work. I'm sure there's a setting buried somewhere in Chrome that would allow this to work, but I think I might have just found a workaround actually myself. Let me save this and try it one more time and see if this will do it for me. So, hey, cool, it works. I got it. It told me I'm right. It told me I'm right. But let me show you real quick. The one thing that I wanted to show you was about the debugger. So I wanted to show you this breakpoints. At this breakpoint, if I set it and I click the button, when I hit the breakpoints, I can actually go over to the console, and if I type in data, it gives me the object back, and I can actually explore and see, okay, there's a thing in it called geonames. It's an array with one element. So now I can say data.geonames, right? And it gives me back the actual object, and I can see, oh, hey, cool, all of the stuff is inside of there. So this is really what I was hoping to show you. And so from there, I can say, okay, data.geonames0 is that object, and then finally, .capital gets me the value that I want. So a combination of using the debugger, setting the debugger at a certain breakpoint, and then switching over to the console and exploring the objects that you have is a very, very efficient technique for debugging your JavaScript code. Alrighty, thank you for your patience today. I ran into some problems that I did not anticipate, but I eventually did get it, so thanks again. You do have a studio to work on. I don't think we have any advanced talks today that I know of, so it's just the studio and the P set. Please let us know if you have any questions or if you need help with anything.